You're live.
Well, good morning, everybody. We have one person that isn't going to make it, and Jackie Folsom, and Heather Darby's going to be a little bit late. She's got a organic certified issue going on at first thing at 9 o'clock this morning, so she'll be with us in a bit, and I think Randy will be joining us in a few minutes. I believe you all have the agenda in front of you, and those of us present will introduce ourselves. I'm Bob Starr and co-chair of the Dairy Task Force, and Dan?
I'm Dan Smith, an attorney in Montpelier with a specialization in milk price regulation, federal and state.
Mike?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Michael Marcotte. I'm a state representative from Coventry, and I chair House Commerce and Economic Development.
John?
Good morning, everyone. I'm John O'Brien. I represent Tunbridge and Royalton, and I serve on the House Committee on Agriculture and Forestry.
John?
Good morning, everybody. I'm John Roberts, former dairy farmer, but now executive director of the Champlain Valley Farmer Coalition, and I'm based in Cornwall, Vermont.
Thank you. And I didn't give this information when I introduced myself, but I chair the Senate Agricultural Committee, and I'm glad to be here and hosting this, I believe, is our seventh meeting of the task force, and throughout the previous meetings, we've heard of issues involving problems in the transportation division of all of our dairy plants and dairy people and businesses. And this morning, we've received correspondence from both DFA and Agra, and we do have with us Barney McCornell from the Dairy Farmers of America, DFA. And so Barney, welcome to our meeting, and you could give us a little background on yourself, and we'll be glad to hear the issues that you bring before us in ways that, and also if you have ideas about how we can help correct these things, that would be most helpful to the committee. Before you get started, Brian, we just had Senator Brock come in from morning, Senator. He's a member of the Senate Finance Committee as well as Economic Development Committee. So good to have you with us.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Good morning.
So I'll turn the floor over to you, Barney, and we'll get started.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I appreciate the opportunity to come before you today. As you said, I'm Barney McConnell. I'm the Director of Transportation for Dairy Farmers of America Northeast. Briefly, what that encompasses is all of the contract haulers that pick up and deliver milk for Dairy Farmers of America members from Maryland to Maine. Falls under my jurisdiction, I guess you could say. Plus, I also, we have two DFA-owned hauling entities. The one you'd be familiar with, previously known as McDermott's, is now DFA Northeast Logistics, and we are in St. Albans, Irisburg, Enosburg, and Shoreham, Vermont. And then we have a small fleet over in Concord, New Hampshire. I really am pleased that your group has taken the interest and the time to look at these topics, and there are many, unfortunately, and they are very important to our dairy farming community. You know, some of the questions that were posed to me, you know, at the end of it, any recommendations or answers? Gosh, I wish I had the answers, but obviously we've all heard about the lack of drivers. This is, we're just about at a catastrophic event here throughout the Northeast and Vermont. It's getting trying to be able to get our members' milk assembled, picked up, and delivered to the plants where our sales staff needs it to be. We're working through it the best we can. A lot of areas where I think you could help is on training. We try at Dairy Farmers of America. We try very hard. We recognize work-life balance for all employees. We try desperately to accommodate that. Our drivers aren't a number. We know them. We work with them. Training, we try very hard to do training, but there's getting more and more stipulations, limitations on the training. I'm sure some of you or all of you are aware that come February of next year, any individual wishing to have a CDL license they couldn't just come to me or anyone in our DFA fleet and say, geez, will you train me? I'll drive for you. They must go to a certified school. It's hard to get the interest. There's too many options out there for a driver. Obviously, in the dairy industry, it's hard for us to compete with wages. It's a terrible strife on the members. Hauling is going to be and is one of the main factors that's going to affect all dairy farmers. Some other issues are weight restrictions. Especially in the New England area, it would be nice if we could have a consistent regulation on weight restrictions. So I'll give you the example of, Vermont and New Hampshire. We have to have 3-axle trailers as opposed to 2 axles to be able to meet the weight restrictions and purchase overweight permits. But in the same token, we can go through Massachusetts and carry the same amount of weight on 2 axles, if not more. I've worked on projects like this in the past with other folks in DFA, and we were able to get some variances made in Pennsylvania and different areas. But if we could get New England to agree, if we could take Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and kind of get all on the same page, that would be a huge help, especially in the dairy industry, because like I'm saying, for our members, the part of getting the value for their dollar, if you will, would be maximum weights that we can deliver to a customer. And that like I say, that is troubling. We can take larger loads through Massachusetts, but we have to get out of Vermont to get there. Other things that are hindering us is farm driveways, laneways, if you will, at farms. Obviously, equipment over time has gotten bigger. Some of the farms are remote. If there was some way to assist some of these farmers in doing some remodeling, if you will, on their driveways to make them more accessible. Some of them are troublesome to back into because of the roadway they're on and whatnot. Another issue that I've noted is exiting farms. Of course, we're going through terrible times for our farmers, and a lot of them are exiting the business now, and that's trying on a hauler. If it takes away the logistics and the convenience out of a route. Now you're, instead of traveling 35 miles and picking up X amount of stops to get a load, now you in some cases you doubled or tripled that time and miles to assemble a full load, and you ruined your logistics of it. Another topic I jotted down is the hauling sector is not the only one facing labor issues. Our customers, the receiving plants are shorthanded. Some, I mean, throughout the Northeast, we hear of some plants, larger plants, of course, that are minus 80 employees. This affects transportation. Now you've got waiting time for these drivers to deliver their loads at the plants. It's costly. And the other thing is a driver doesn't want to sit and wait. A driver, particularly a milk truck driver, they want to assemble their load, they want to deliver it to the customer, get unloaded, washed, and go home. And this is a large problem in our industry. The drivers just don't, they're not patient waiters. They're like the rest of us. They want to do their job, they want to do it very well, and they want to go home. Obviously, labor costs, tolls keep going up. A main factor in milk hauling is insurance. Insurance for a milk hauler typically is quite a bit more expensive than it is for other transportation sectors. Obviously, the insurance world recognizes that we're putting very large, heavy equipment on rural roads, the conditions and whatnot they're in and out of, and they're a risk factor. So insurance cost has risen greatly. On-farm storage, milking times at farms, with what I would call windows of opportunity to pick up the milk is troublesome. As farms grow, they add cows, and the storage, the on-farm storage never changes. So we have some farms that we go to 3 times a day. Well, the first time you go there, it's more than likely it's en route. It's a continuous logistical route. But the second, or definitely the third time, you could be traveling 25 to 35 miles one way out of route to go pick up this farm. So druthers, an ask I would have, if there was ever any opportunity for a program to help farmers with their on-farm storage, that would be a great help to them and to the hauling community. Another topic I jotted down for us this morning is plant hours of receiving. I've been at this a very long time. I'll admit my age here. I been in the milk hauling industry for 38 years, and plants used to be just like farmers and just like haulers. They never stopped. Well, now that's not necessarily the case. We're a little more fortunate in New England than other areas, but plants have been forced to set solid, rigid start times and stop times to try to retain workers themselves. So we have plants in other areas, just to give you an example, it's not affected by your area for the most part, but some milk plants shut down at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, for a milk hauler, how can you go out and assemble, start in the morning to start assemble your load after farmers are done milking, have it assembled and get to your destination by 3 in the afternoon? That's troublesome. You know, back to the driver issue. It's a lot of people they want to work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and make a very good living doing it. Unfortunately, we're 24/7, 365 business. The cows don't take Christmas off. We all know all this, and the mindset of a lot of people today is that just doesn't work for them, nor do they want to try to make it work. Getting qualified drivers, the recruitment, the retention, and coming up with competitive pay. I'll finish with those gentlemen because that right now is the main focus of my attention, and how to keep this all together, how to make it work and not have it be the final straw for any member producer. And I hit some highlights. There's more. You hit a nerve with me. I could go on all day, but I certainly would entertain or love to answer any questions any of you might have.
Yeah. Thank you, Barney. I was wondering about the state law or federal law. Do you know which one it is that's going to require all new drivers or potential drivers to go to a certified school?
That is a federal. That's a
So
federal
that's
law.
a federal law. Yeah. And is that's a federal rule, must be from the interstate commerce?
Yes, FMCSA. So to elaborate on that a little more, sir, is again, come, I believe it's February of 2022, to get a CDL license. And even if you want to change the status of your license. So I will use the example of, I've been driving for years, but I only have a Class B, which would allow me to drive what I would call a straight truck or a 10-wheeler. If you want to upgrade that to a Class A so that you can drive a truck trailer combination, no more can you just take a test and upgrade that. You would have to go to a school, certified school, get that certification, and then be able to upgrade your license.
Yeah, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If you can drive a 10-wheeler, you ought to be able to drive a tractor trailer. The only difference is your radius turning and maybe stopping. But other than that, going through the gears are running now and automatic, and being courteous and all that shouldn't require a person to have to go to school. That's
right.
for sure.
And you mentioned the automatic, sir. I would like to bring to your attention, since our merger with St. Albans Co-op, and since we have assumed the duties of what used to be McDermott's, now Northeast Logistics, I've spent large amounts of money revamping the fleet. We're updating the fleet. I have so far have put in to service 25 new power units, tractors. We've got, let's see, 29, almost 40 new trailers. Obviously, there's multiple reasons for that. You know, maintenance is not cheap. We're saving on maintenance, but the drivers coming that are at Northeast Logistics and coming to Northeast Logistics, before I'm done, we're going to have a brand new fleet of equipment up, you know, ultra modern, nice equipment. And you mentioned the automatic transmission. So far, the new tractors I've purchased have had the automatic transmission. It gives you a little more flexibility because in today's world, some of these people coming out of schools or that have just been trained can't drive the standard shift trucks. They're only certified for an automatic transmission.
Maybe you could tell us what the difference in the price of a new truck with an automatic versus a standard transmission costs you folks.
Oh, gosh, this is going to be a very rough number. It's about roughly a $10,000 option.
Yeah.
Now
Yes.
that was pre-pandemic prices, not post-pandemic prices.
Yeah, I understand they're very expensive. The other question that I have, raising the weight limits, is that gonna help move more milk from the west into our federal order, or would it make any difference on that?
Oh, it would. Yes, it definitely would. So I'll give you an example. So I'm here in central New York. I live in Cortland, New York, just 50 miles south of Syracuse. And here we can haul 100,000 pounds on 5 axles. So what I'm used to here at home is we run 8,000 gallon tankers hauling 71 to 72,000 pounds. And with our overweight permits, we're legal. In Vermont, I'm struggling to be able to get 63 to maybe, if I'm lucky, 64,000 pounds on a triaxle trailer on 6 axles. So if we could standardize these weight limits, and even if it had to have the 3rd axle, if we could get the gross weight raised, that would be an enormous help.
So can't you with a 6 axle rig, can't you go to 100,000 now?
99 to 100, yes, with 6 axles. Part of the problem, so you can, but you lose on payload because of that. Now you're carrying the weight of that extra axle. That can run anywhere from, again, very rough numbers, 1,800 pounds. In our world, that's a lot. That's another 1,800 pounds I'd rather have in the trailer, not on the trailer.
Yeah, yeah. Are there questions of the other members? Senator Brock and John?
I've just got a couple of questions regarding someone who is a dairy hauler. What kind of a wage might they get? And if it's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week business, I'm assuming there's overtime and other kinds of premium benefits as well?
Yes, yes. So, again, we at DFA, we pride ourselves in the package, you might say, for our employees. And, depending on the driver situation, for our Northeast Logistics drivers, It varies. We have drivers that could be, I would say the bottom range, and I'm talking yearly gross income, would be anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 a year. This could, so this encompasses part-time help. Some drivers are more eager, if you will, than others, but that would be the standard range.
And in terms of the training, the CDL training for either the basic CDL and the various extensions that you refer to, what kind of cost would be incurred for that kind of training?
Well, I haven't checked lately, sir, but the last I knew, the training and going to a certified school, I've heard of them running anywhere from $4,500 to $8,000.
And for what duration of time is needed for that training?
It varies. It depends on the school. To my knowledge, and I'm probably, well, there's no probably, I'm not the right one completely to speak to this, but I don't believe there's a set time criteria on the training. It's when you can achieve your goal, but typically I think it would run between 8 and 10 weeks is the last I knew.
Does DFA pay for any training for CDL drivers that it might hire?
We have not as of yet, but it is something that we are talking about. Like I say, currently right now, if anyone was interested, we wouldn't necessarily train them from start to finish, but if they had gotten their license and just needed polishing, if you will, we've been able to help in that. We've set up a program and worked with our insurance companies and been able to finish their training and get them used to the equipment. But we have not started a certified school, but it's definitely in the talks that we not necessarily start a school, but we partner with some.
Well, I know in Vermont, we've done some things with the Department of Motor Vehicles to provide for equivalence of trainings. For example, people who leave the military who have had certain military occupational specialties involving the handling of trucks are exempt from the schooling requirement. Do you know if this federal, the new federal statutes or rules that you're talking about have any exemptions for that kind of situation?
To my knowledge, sir, that would be the only exemption. I think for a veteran, that rule would still apply.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. John Roberts.
Hi, Barney. I think I've been involved in the dairy industry about as long as you have. And I think all the time I've been involved in, we've had this argument over weight limits between states. So I guess it's an ongoing thing. I was curious about two things. How much cooperation is there between DFA and Agrimark on hauling? I know there's some, but is it extensive or not really? Because about picking up loads that are more convenient for their drivers and combining them, if that's what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, so I would call it extensive. I would like to say we have a very, very good working relationship with Agrimark. There are very few haulers that either of us use that we don't share. So we have a co-mingle agreement with Agrimark so that, the truck drives down the road and there's 3 farms on it and 2 of them are DFA and one's Agrimark. Well, they're going to be able to get them all. This is and then we have, a swap agreement with them. So the co-mingle and the swap agreement, this is to create the efficiencies to be able to pass, so both of us can pass that savings back to our members.
Okay. I was also curious about how many farms, some of the big farms now direct, they milk, chill, and put it right in tractor trailers. Do you have quite a lot of producers, or is that who've gone to that kind of system, or is it fairly small?
Well, specifically in Vermont, it's relatively small, but it's changing. Okay, so there's some different variations of what you're speaking of. So what you just described is what I would call a direct load. Okay.
Yep.
Where trailer is spotted on a farm, they milk, runs through a chiller directly into a trailer. And then there would be the variation I would call self-load, where there would be a trailer spotted on the farm and a farm employee pump the milk onto a trailer for the driver to come get. And then the third variation is one that we're at NEL, we're working on a lot here lately, and that would be on the larger farms that would create a load, keeping a high-speed pump at the farm so that a driver can pull in with a transport trailer. So this is a transport trailer as opposed to a farm pickup trailer. It's just the trailer itself, no pumps, no extra apparatus or weight to carry around, back into the farm, use the high-speed pump that's housed on the farm, load it and go. There's huge savings there. The trailer's lighter, so again, we can put on a bigger payload, and significant time savings also. The high-speed transfer pump could load 65,000 pounds in 20 minutes as opposed to maybe 45 minutes or 50 minutes.
And my last it's not really a question. I've always wondered why when trucks arrive at the plant to offload their milk, is it totally unfeasible to think of them just dropping off their trailer, hitching onto a clean trailer and heading out instead of waiting there? Do you think that would have any time savings? Or, I assume it would mean you'd have to own more trailers, and someone at the plant would have to maneuver them.
Yes.
So I'm just throwing out an idea which you can shoot down.
Oh, no, I won't shoot it down at all. No, we do that in a few areas. Specifically, we do that at the St. Albans plant. Okay.
Oh.
So several of the drivers throughout the day say they load 2, maybe 3 loads a day. They will say they load the first one and they take it into the plant. They unload it, but don't wash. They just unload it. They go right back out, pick up their second load, and then when they return, that one would get dropped in our yard. And then later that evening, a NEL employee that we have on site, we have them 24/7, 365 work the yard. They'll bring those loaded trailers into the plant during the night and offload them. So that saves time on that driver. It also helps the plant. So now, obviously, there's other haulers that come into the plant. It gives them opportunity. They're not waiting for that many more trucks. They stand a better chance of being able to enter, unload, wash, and leave. And then at the plant's leisure, we unload those other ones during the night. There's a few other cases where that's done, but you are correct, sir. That takes a lot more equipment to do that. And obviously there's a cost associated to that.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. John O'Brien, did you have a question?
I did, Bobby. John Roberts mostly asked it. But Barney, I was just wondering, do you also have agreements with, does Northeast Logistics have organic trucks picking up from, say, Organic Valley or Horizon?
We do one organic route, and it's for upstate Niagara, and that is done out of our Irisburg terminal.
Okay. And I was just thinking, you know, if I'm a drone looking down at the Northeast in your district here, I'm just trying to figure out where all the milk's going. So say in Vermont, we've seen in hearings that more and more the producers are clustered around processing plants, or you don't want to take it all the way to Virginia like Horizon Milk now. So I was just wondering, does the vast majority of DFA picked up Vermont milk stay in Vermont?
I don't know the exact split, you know, obviously a fair amount does, but also a large amount would go to New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Massachusetts.
So what are those plants?
As far as, so that would be, you know, for example, Franklin Foods, or no, I'm sorry, not Franklin, the DFA plant in Franklin, Mass, just outside of Boston, Gaida in Connecticut, Agramark plants in Mass, different variations.
And is it mostly fluid milk that gets turned into, I mean, that gets bottled, or is it's a whole mix of?
It's a mix. It's a mix. I would say a combination of fluid and cheese.
Yeah. Okay. But you don't, I mean, how far does Vermont milk go? Does it go, you know, even out to Buffalo, Niagara, or does it go, you know, out of New England even?
On rare occasions, yes, but I would say the mainstay would be the New England states.
Yeah. Thank you.
And Barney, you talked about insurance on milk haulers being very high, and so I was wondering, Representative Marcotte chairs the Commerce Committee. Have you had any meetings with the insurance industry in regards to rate settings and any of that in regards to milk hauling, Michael?
No, we haven't, Bobby. I'm just wondering if there's a difference in rates, if you're driving in Vermont opposed to driving in New York or New Hampshire or Massachusetts.
Not that I'm aware of, sir. One of the expensive components is the umbrella. So a lot of us, DFA included, and Agramark definitely, are requiring that our haulers have a $5 million umbrella. And both Agramark and ourselves, we're just starting to really enforce that. And in some cases, of course, it depends on the size of the fleet and obviously your record, your CSA score, but their costs can triple for that umbrella coverage.
And as far as training, Michael, is there anything in the state with their training programs where they could help Barney with getting these schools where we could pick up some of the costs?
Yeah, that was a question I was going to ask Barney is if you've been or have you worked with the Department of Labor? We do have training dollars, and that are put up for CDL drivers. And just wondering if you had worked with the state with Vermont anyway, on trying to work with them to get drivers certified.
To some extent, yes, but the way it was explained to us, and again, sir, I was not involved in it directly, but the way it was explained to us was there really wasn't the monies didn't apply. So I'll have to investigate what you're telling me, and I do appreciate that.
And I'd really, it would be really good if you could let me know what you learn, because I think if those monies don't apply, I'd want to know why. And you know, when we come back in January, I think we want to make sure that, you know, workforce is going to be number one in my committee anyway. And we want to make sure that all the dollars that the federal government is providing, and also the dollars that we are providing, are going to help get people trained to take these jobs, because they're critical.
Oh, yes, and so myself and others, we will investigate that and certainly let you know our findings, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And I'm wondering, I haven't worked directly with Efficiency Vermont. I don't know if Senator Brock or Representative Marcotte have, but is there some help with Efficiency Vermont, or the Efficiency Vermont? Could they help farmers with their storage cooling and that stuff, or is that are they just into the refrigeration part and not into the tank sizes and things?
That's a good question. I don't know. We don't really deal with Efficiency Vermont anymore, because that's gone to another committee, but I think that's a pretty interesting question.
It's certainly worth exploring.
Yeah. So we can look into that part, Barney, and see if, I mean, that's crazy running a truck 3 times a day to a farm to pick up the, you know, small amounts of milk.
Yes.
So we'll be looking into that along with other issues in the transportation efficiency side of it. Dan?
Just to follow up on that one, what size farms is that problem mostly seen on?
Yeah, you know, that's a variety. That would cover the entire gamut, what I would call small, medium, and large farms. Unfortunately, storage or tank capacity is more often than not the last thing that gets any attention on the farm. So I certainly have seen that in all variations, whether a member is producing, you know, 3,500 pounds of milk, or if they're in the load a day category. Storage is an issue more often than not.
But in terms of the farms that you're going 3 times a day, are you going to a smaller farm 3 times a day that's in the 3,500?
You know, I guess if I had to pinpoint one of them, I would say that maybe the medium size. So if a producer has, you know, 20 to 30,000 pounds, that might be more of an issue for that category.
I'm gonna jump around a little bit, but main question is, to start, you listed a whole range of challenges. If you were gonna prioritize them, 1, 2, and 3, which would you say are the most serious challenges that you confront?
Definitely the driver issue, number one. first and
Yeah.
foremost, a driver issue. Boy, I guess right now I would have to say that the storage situation on farms would be 2. And, I would throw cooling in with the storage. So that would be together. And then, as far as where I think the state can help me, number 3, I would say that the driveway situation on the farms.
So on the driver's side, if there's training and wages, I think we have some sense on the training, what's that issue. On wages, if 50 to 100,000 is still not sufficient, where do you think the wage scale needs to be that you would, maybe not be able to resolve the problem, but at least be able to address it better? What would the offer need to be?
Well, that's a moving target. And it's a combination, sir. It's a combination of wages and work-life balance. The work-life balance we can provide, we do provide. It would be easier to provide if we had more drivers. I honestly think before all is said and done, driver is going to be at least in the $30 an hour range.
So if what do you think is the most consequential thing that you would need to do, or you and or the state, to make more drivers available? In the best of all possible worlds, how do you see that? To as Representative Marcotte said, if these are essential jobs, how would the state or you reorient the work environment and wages? And then we can figure out who can do what, I suppose.
Yeah, I wish I had the answers, but I've tried. We're trying, and I know other haulers are trying everything too. It's driving is one aspect. People have too many other options. So you've got the driving, but now throwing in the dairy industry, it's you have to have the interest, okay? I guess it would be through education. The best thing best way I can answer that, sir, is through education. That people know what the job is, what it means to a farm, what it means to a community. I mean, we pride ourselves, all of us, whether it be the farmer, the haulers, we're feeding people. And what that job means, and just again, through education, if we can get them trained, get them going, they're going to make a viable living. The more of them we get, we're going to be able to provide that much more of a work-life balance, quality of life, if you will. That's what people are looking for, and working with we're working with customers at the plants to keep detention waiting time at a minimum. Everybody wants to know what time they're going to leave for work and what time they're going to be back the best we can. Obviously, we live in a world where there's a lot of variance, but for the most part, on a day-to-day basis, be able to provide to them when they're leaving, when they're coming back. It's a tough one that we faced for a long time. I also, and it's not a new topic, I sit on a board with a group called International Milk Haulers. So this is a group of milk haulers from all over the United States and Canada. And I was fortunate enough for the last 3 years, I was president of that organization. And we have done enormous amounts of work over the years to find the answers, and but we've yet to hit that sweet spot.
Well, that's very helpful. And then are the international milk haulers or the states working on the storage issue in some coordinated manner to try to address that issue, or is it being done company by company or state by state?
But definitely no coordinated issue. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, but sometimes getting states or different organizations to work together is a challenge within itself. Through the international milk haulers, we spend a lot of time. We have people that sit on the board at NCIMS for the process for the PMO, pasteurized milk ordinance. We try that way. We work with different state entities. For example, in New England, and specifically in Vermont, I work very closely with E.B. Flory, Vermont Ag, and E.B. has been wonderful to work with, but obviously there's only so much she can do too. So no, there has not been a collaborative effort necessarily between states, but it certainly would be welcome.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Well, Barney, I don't know if there are other questions, but looking over your document that was sent to us, you do a $2,600 sign-on bonus. I see the hourly rate is up toward $30 an hour. And you also pay a $30 an hour wait time if your drivers get stuck at one of these plants and has to wait over a certain length of time. I don't know how much more, that $30 an hour is well over double what our minimum wage is here in Vermont. And so I guess what we got to do is promote truck driving as a very viable way to support a family. And I mean, I should think they would work 10 hours a day.
Yes.
It's a pretty good income. Do they also, that wasn't mentioned, do your drivers work on a rotating basis? So, because you're 24/7. So, do some drivers alternate on weekends so that your week starts on Monday and some start Saturday, and how
Yes.
does that all work out?
Yes, they do. So the drivers work with the terminal managers. Again, we have the 4 terminals, and so to give you an example, some drivers work a 6-1 schedule, some work a 5-2. There's different variations, but to really answer your question is yes, it rotates around so that they're splitting weekends for the most part. Some drivers actually would rather work through the weekend and have Tuesday and Wednesday off or something like that. It kind of depends on the individual. And we're very lucky when it comes to that we can work with them and provide that flexibility.
Yeah. Well, there any other questions? John O'Brien?
Thank you, Bobby. Barney, I guess I'm curious and I'm ignorant about this, but thinking about milk as a perishable product. I just wondered, if when it leaves the cow or when it's in a farm bulk tank, maybe, what's its time before it starts to go bad? I mean, you must be under a deadline to get it to a plant, I would think. And so if you miss, a plant offload and it has to sit in a truck, I would think. I just wondered, sort of what's the standard of when milk starts to go bad from even when it's cool.
Well, so there's regulations and criteria for all that. And then above and beyond, just like anything above the regulations, there's customer specifics. So I'll give you the example, doesn't affect your state, but there's a cheese plant in northern Pennsylvania that will reject a load if it's more than 24 hours since the last farm was put on. So industry can have their standards, and then there's PMO standards. But I strive, and the druthers would be, if that milk isn't delivering 12 hours after it was loaded, I'm getting nervous. I want to get it loaded to the plant, and the plants, the customers are going to want that. They're going to want it as fresh as possible also.
Yeah. And then, so are you contractually obligated to pick up milk from DFA farmers, say? I'm just thinking about your cooling and your bulk tank storage issue.
Sure. Good time.
Is there a time limit on when it leaves the cow to when you're picking it up? So, whether it's an everyday pickup or every other day sort of thing. Is it more dictated by how long it's been sitting in the bulk tank, or that their bulk tanks are filling up?
Well, it would, I believe the rules are more on a time frame, again, I'll go back in the old days, I go by milkings, you could only pick up 4 milkings. Well, that's, 4 milkings. And now if an individual milks 3 times a day, every other day, now you're getting 6. So that, but there is a time limit on it, and typically it's within 2 days. So it would be the every other day. You couldn't go to necessarily a 3rd day. In some cases you can. I don't want to wipe that, but typically you wouldn't.
Okay. Yeah. So the old 4 milkings thing is no longer in effect.
Not necessarily, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Barney, how far west do you coordinate the hauling?
So we, just for Northeast Logistics, we only pick up milk in the state of Vermont currently. Well, I take that back. We do have a couple stops in New Hampshire, northern New Hampshire, but for the most part, it's just Vermont. But for myself as Director of Transportation, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay, so that would be, I cover the 13 Northeast states. So as far west as, let's see, my territory would go 3/4 of the way through Pennsylvania. So I would like from, my cutoff would be like from Erie, Pennsylvania down.
Yeah. So you cover a big area, and do you have the same problems in all the areas with your driver shortages and your pickup logistics, or is it mainly here in the upper Northeast or here in Vermont and New Hampshire and Maine?
It's everywhere, sir. And some places are considerably worse. Just to try to give you an understanding, currently right now, I would say my worst area and where my greatest concerns are would be Northwest New Jersey. Haulers have not survived. There's basically one in the area. That is a gentleman that's himself. He owns one truck and he's doing all he can. So many farms in the state have exited. The way I usually put it is this group of farms in northern New Jersey might as well be on an island. It's no matter how you do it, it's out of the way to go get them. Typically, they're smaller farms. They're spread apart. It's a challenging area. Just to give you a example.
And along that same line, do you pick up milk down in Lancaster County, PA? Are you in charge of that area? And I believe that's where most of the Amish are, and there's usually small farms. Are they being crowded out like other small farms around the Northeast?
Yeah, no. So yes, Lancaster County is mine, and it is thriving. It's doing well. There are the small ones, but some of the Amish farms in Lancaster and those areas down there are different than what I would see here in New York or you would see there in New England. Some of them are fairly large farms, but the short answer to your question is no, those smaller farms are thriving quite well.
Yeah. Well, that's good news.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
yeah, you're pulling some milk into the St. Albans plant from New York, right?
Yes,
And if it's
northern
not-
New York.
So that's not northern logistics. That's another part of the DFA operation.
Well, there's many reasons, and specifically the reasons I would have to refer to the sales team or to our dispatch team, but there's just a little bit from very northern New York. I would say probably the farthest that New York milk would come from would be Canton, Potsdam area coming over.
I'm sorry. Bobby was asking me a question.
No, that's
You were saying
fine.
where-
So
I
just
apologize.
yeah, there's just some from northern New York. I would say the farthest area that comes from would be probably the Canton, Potsdam area, maybe once in a while towards Watertown.
And so a different hauling arrangement brings that in?
Different
northern
haulers,
logistics.
yes. Yeah, different,
Okay.
yeah, New York haulers would bring that in.
Yep. Any other questions from committee to Barney? Well, certainly want to thank you for your time this morning. We certainly appreciate it. I think we've got some issues that we can help you with, and hopefully we can help you with here in Vermont. And we'll keep everything that was said in mind, and we have a good record of your testimony. Plus, we've all taken many notes. So thank you very much again.
Well, I would just like to say thank you to all of you. It is just fantastic that you're taking the time and you're seeing the need and helping out. So again, thank you for having me today for the discussion.
Thanks very much, Barney.
So the next on the agenda, I think I'll have
Well, we got two other things. First,
Oh, we got,
I just wanted to ask you, we heard from Barney, Agrimark sent in their letter, so whether you had any, thoughts from your experience in terms of what Agrimark has submitted that we should take notice of? And I don't mean to put you on the spot. Otherwise, the other issue we have is the underutilized dairy capacity, just for the record. To have a little discussion of that before we get to Brian.
yeah, the Agra issue, I think they said they only had one opening left in, they're looking for one driver. And they don't seem to be having, they have individual haulers, they have private haulers and not own their own vehicles. And it seems to me like they're having better luck than just hiring drivers to drive company trucks. And I guess that's working for them. They commingle loads, they said, with DFA. The driveway issue is an issue there, getting big tankers in where 10-wheelers and single trucks used to go. So I think that the training and that is not so much an issue, because the truck companies that haul their milk have to tend to all that. And a lot of them are single owner operator type trucks.
So you're saying Agrimark's, essentially their business model is different. They're relying on independent haulers instead of having it in-house.
That's the big difference, and it seems to be working better, but yet you want to remember they're much smaller than DFA. And I think the bigger you are, the more problems you're gonna have.
Well, they're bigger, they're smaller than DFA co-op to co-op, but they're bigger than DFA as far as Vermont goes.
Yes, but overall,
Yeah.
their work model is much different than DFA's.
And then the Valencourt company they would be an independent company that Agrimark would contract with them?
Yes, and
what other companies besides Valencourt are?
well, I don't have the names, but I know there's a company out in New Hampshire that hauls a lot of Agrimark milk, and they come over into Vermont and pick up as well as picking up over there.
But that would be basically the business at this point. You have DFA has its own companies, its own in-house, and Agrimark is contracting with whoever is in the independent hauling, and that's the milk hauling business in Vermont. What's left of it?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
there
Sorry.
used to be like 15 milk haulers in Vermont, independent milk haulers. Down Middlebury Way, they had big independents that have gone out up home. There's 4 or 5 that were independent, and they've gone out. And so it's changed as time has gone on. John, you had a question?
I just had a comment on listening to you and Dan, Bobby. So Kenny Pope is based in Shoreham, and he hauls for Agrimark a lot of the milk in Addison County. But the other one is in Orwell is I think then Robco, who haul only organic milk, and it kind of would be.
That's my question for you, John. Yeah.
Yeah,
Who's
they
hauling for
haul,
organic?
yeah, they haul only organic, and they must have some real logistical problems since, they hauling with tractor trailers and they're going to a lot of small farms. So just, it'd be interesting in some ways to find out what their issues are. They're probably not a lot different. They're just magnified by the fact that organic producers tend to be smaller.
And, the, Organic Valley, Travis, when he testified for us, he said that their members, some of them, I think were members of Agramart. No, like this,
They
I
all
thought each call.
they all have to be. I think they all. If you're an organic producer, I think this is right. You're also a member of a co-op, either DFA or Agrimark.
Right.
And the paycheck comes through Agrimark or DFA. And it's sort of why
That's what I
these
understood too.
horizon
But the hauling
producers,
doesn't seem to track though. From what he
Yeah,
said,
yeah,
DFA is not
that's-
hauling organic.
well, it's
So that
because
was-
you can't run the risk of putting organic milk on a conventional milk truck and having to, I'm not going to call it contamination, but, mixing,
Commingled. Yeah,
commingling. Yeah.
yeah.
Good.
So that's fills out the hauling a little bit, but
And-
for the record.
The big difference is in some of these cases is the cost of operating. You take like DFA with their own fleet of trucks. I'm sure they have a very high cost for workers' comp insurance. They provide, I bet, health insurance for their workers, vacation time, sick time, waiting time. And so their cost of operation is pretty large. You heard Barney say that just their trucks, they put those automatic transmissions in them for the easement of the driver and driver capability, whereas an owner operator who's self-employed has no workers' comp. He takes a vacation when he can. Probably has no health insurance and certainly wouldn't buy a truck with an automatic transmission in most cases. So, just their overhead cost is tremendous. And I know McDermott used to complain a lot about how these owner operators could undercut him in operational costs because they didn't have to have workers' comp and things like that because the owner operated the vehicle and had to sustain those losses on his own. So anyways, any other questions with
Hauling, no?
Colin?
No.
So-
John.
Bobby?
Yes.
Just a couple of things you guys could sort of clear up for me. One was that it seems like, are there any in-house pickup trucks for the organic world? Because like Rodney Graham, right? He went out because the tractor trailer didn't want to go to the Graham farm up the steep roads anymore. But it wasn't, I don't think it was Organic Valley. It must have been an independent trucker. And then also you've got, I was wondering about was it the Chappets who had their own trucks?
Yeah.
So some of the LFOs have their own trucks now and how that works too. Essentially they're independent truckers themselves, I guess.
Yeah, Shapa has his own. And the big guys over in Franklin County, most of them have company trucks coming. I know St. Pierre doesn't haul his own. And people up in Enosburg, between Sheldon and Enosburg, the big farm up there, they have, DFA do theirs. So I don't know, Shapa, if he's making any money or with his own trucks or not, but he has two. And they run every day.
Where do they go?
Well, a lot of days they just go to St. Albans. Occasionally they go to Franklin and Mass and down that way. But I see them, I live on the road to St. Albans from over the mountain, and a lot of days I see them going by headed to St. Albans.
So they have to coordinate with a DFA dispatch then on where those trucks are going?
Yes, yes.
Huh. And now as far as like Horizon goes, their string of Vermont farmers, are they all picked up, by independent truckers who are all then heading to Virginia?
The only trucks I see up north, we have a few, I think maybe 3 Horizon farmers in the Northeast Kingdom. Is that company that John Roberts mentioned, and their straight job truck that I see up north. 10-wheeler truck.
I think Rovco are the only, as far as I know, they're the only independent organic trucker in the state. I may be wrong there, but I remember when I worked for the Agency of Ag, I was often amazed when I'd find them ways on the other side of the state away from Orwell, and they'd be picking up some organic producer. Just on the trucking, the couple of really 4 Hills, who are a very large farm, close to St. Pierre's in size in Bristol, they direct load onto, and when I drive by there, they have usually at least 3, if not 4 trailers backed up to their barn. But Agrimark actually comes, or a hauler for Agrimark, probably Kenny Pope. He comes and picks them up, those trailers, but they're only 8 to 10 miles from the Cabot plant in Middlebury, so it's an easy haul for them. And then Foster Brothers, who milk about 450 cows, they also direct load, but they're 2 miles from the Cabot plant in Middlebury. So, and they probably just direct hauled, gets hauled there, but they're both hauled they're actually transported by Pope's trucking. They don't own the trailers. Pope just swaps them out.
Any other comments or questions? We still have 10 minutes. The status of unutilized dairy capacity.
Yeah, so Jackie and some other task force members asked about the status of the Grafton Cheese plant and also the Thomas Dairy equipment. So I've been able to track down what happened to Thomas, which is that the equipment all got dissipated in an auction. So the Thomas equipment does not exist any longer, just sitting there idle. I don't know if anybody else has had a chance to find out what the status of Grafton Cheese is, but I haven't been able to do that as to whether that plant is idle. There was also I think it was the Vermont Milk Company up in Hardwick. And that it was the old bottling equipment that was the UVM bottling equipment going back quite a while. When they went out of business, I would guess 20 years ago, somebody from Hardwick bought that equipment, had it sitting in a warehouse for a while, and it got used for a couple of years, but that's been sold too. So other than Grafton, it does not appear that there is any currently unused milking equipment in the state.
Dan, was the Grafton plant run by a foundation, right? The Wyndham Foundation, is that who ran
Yes.
that?
Yes.
Okay. I
Yeah.
have a contact there, I think. I could possibly find out whether it's all just sitting there or.
That'd be great. I just plain ran out of time before today to chase it down. Yeah.
I'll send a text.
There is the Thomas Dairy, they were looking for a buyer. It wasn't for lack of trying to keep the operation in business. I talked to John Rooney at some length about this, and they couldn't find a buyer. And the equipment wasn't, it had been updated. There wasn't much room for expansion. That was one issue. So whether I think it's still an open question as to whether a company of that size is viable. So that was the other kind of half of the threat. But in terms of the equipment, it's been dissipated and it's gone.
So any other questions on equipment, unutilized?
You want me to send it to them right now?
Bobby,
Yes,
I just
John?
wondered if it's come up at the agency or other people in the milk business, but if there were investment dollars out there, when we hear of this $300 million plant built in Wisconsin, what sort of plant, given consumer preferences, would someone build in the Northeast or Vermont? Like is cheese, do we need another cheese plant in New England? Do we need more fluid milk bottling capacity? I just wonder, as far as what the economists would say, like, oh, here's a hole, as far as if there were investment dollars for some sort of dairy plant, what would people point towards?
If I could, that's one of the subjects for the next meeting, John.
Okay.
Exactly that. Well, hopefully we're going to have testimony on that specific question. So there's fluid, there's cheese, yogurt, and then also there's the higher end of taking the components out of milk through a processing. It's really a filtering processing, and then selling the components themselves separately.
Sorry, but Dan, just a quick follow-up to Grafton Cheese. I just looked up their website. They're selling cheese on their website that is labeled. So
yeah.
they must be still making it.
I don't have the answer. I've heard that that's where I went and was a little bit surprised, because I've heard they're defunct, but they are still selling cheese. So to be continued, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Hopefully they're still in business. Hopefully, it's a rumor, right? Yeah.
I thought they moved their plant to Brattleboro, was it? Does anybody know about that? They moved out of Grafton.
They had 2 plants and they shut down one, and we're gonna sell it to, what's that school that's near them? Brattleboro.
Up on the hill.
And, but they still had one other plant. I think the outstanding issue is whether that other plant is still out.
I see. So the Grafton plant in Grafton is still making cheese,
Yeah.
but their second plant in Brattleboro.
Yeah.
That's Mike, our counsel is speaking to us. Thank you. So we will gather those facts for the record before we're done here, and we'll know that better.
Yeah, and one thing I think is important for all of us to keep in mind as we move forward is that if if we're gonna think about a new plant, it ought to be something that's new to the industry, so that we're utilizing more milk, not for the usual things, but for the unusual things, to build a new market, to get rid of this milk and try to get a better price for it. We're very fortunate to have the yogurt plant in Brattleboro and because that's utilized a lot of milk. If your fluid market is going south, and doesn't seem to be any let up on that loss. So if we, hopefully at our next meeting, we'll hear some good things about some type of a new product that could utilize quite a lot of milk and so we stop the bleeding of our farms in the rural parts of Vermont.
So we're looking for, tight cost and scale, John. There's tremendous work been done, obviously, in the fluid area over time. It's less in kind of academic on new ones, but that's what we're aiming for the next meeting.
So are we ready
Sorry.
to move on to?
Yeah, any,
Sorry,
John?
can I just, one last comment when, Dan, you just said what we're aiming for the next meeting. I really think we need to hear from New England Dairy. They have a lot of information on consumer preferences,
Yeah.
what consumers are looking for.
Yeah.
So Rainey Tebow or somebody at New England Dairy to come and talk about their
Yeah.
consumer research.
and just to reiterate, any other additional suggestions any task force members have in this area for either witnesses or subjects, please let us know. No, we have her down, John, from your prior email, so she's certainly on the list.
So Dan, you want to introduce our next guest?
So, see Brian. Brian will introduce himself, but if hopefully I'm not getting this wrong, Brian, Chief Economist for the Federal Milk Market Order 1. And Brian and I have been working together on a number of projects over the years, and I found him to be extremely thoughtful and hear you out as far as what you're looking for, and then work way too hard to provide the answer. So it's a chance to thank him publicly for his help over all the years. And we look forward to your testimony, Brian. And please introduce yourself for the record and go forward.
I appreciate that introduction, Dan. So first, you can hear me fine, just to make sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I am Brian Reardon. For the record, I have been an economist for the Northeast Milk Market Administrator's Office for about 21 years now. I started there in 2000 as an economist, and I work out of our Albany, New York location, and have since I've been there. And I, like to say, Dan, I appreciate yours and everybody else in the room's efforts in supporting the dairy industry. I myself and my colleagues, we all certainly feel that that's our mission as far as supporting the dairy industry. So I appreciate the task force giving me and the market administrator the opportunity today to share some federal order market information. Hopefully the information will benefit your efforts in what you've been charged to do as a task force. So with that, I can get started sharing that information. But again, I really thank you for my opportunity here today.
Brian, if I could just add one thing, when we talked about Brian's testimony for today, really talked about kind of two areas that intersect. The first is a description of what the federal order system does, and statistics about the order as a whole. And then separate is focusing more on the Vermont milk market and providing us as much detail as possible with regard to Vermont. So with that backdrop of the ask,
All right.
back to you, Brian.
Yes, that is correct. And I'll give you a quick overview of what to expect out of my remarks from beginning to end, and then we'll get to it, and I can get into the details. So I will share my screen here. Okay. All right. So what my plan for the day is, I will go over. I'll give you an overview of what federal orders do and don't do. I think that's always a good place to start as far as offering context. Sometimes there is confusion on those things: what we do, what we don't do, what we can do, and so forth. Then, because we're going to present some of the information afterwards, I'd like to just give a few comments on the data. Where are the data coming from that I'm using to present to you all today? Then I think I'm going to go from a broad perspective of federal orders in the United States as far as marketings go. Then I will we'll kind of hone in a little bit closer into the Northeast and what's been happening as a market dynamic there now and over time leading up to this point. And lastly, as we keep fine tuning the lens, we'll focus in more on Vermont and maybe some brief comparisons with some of our surrounding states in the region. So that's my roadmap in a general basis. So we'll start right off with what federal orders do. And so one thing federal orders do is we define the terms of trade between the buyer of the milk and the seller of the milk. In doing this, we do provide a classified pricing plan. And basically it's the value is based on the use of the milk. And as you were just talking about, as far as if you're going to have another plant in Vermont, yes, you were mentioning, class 1, class 2, which products, so class 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'm sure you're familiar with by now what the basic products are in that. Class 1 fluid, class 2 is, yogurt, ice cream, soft products. Class 3 might be your, more traditional aged cheese like cheddar, and so forth. And then class 4, butter and powder. And this generates revenue. When we price this way, it generates revenue above the base manufacturing price level. We also generate blend prices for producers. Producers will receive what we call a statistical uniform price. It's basically going to get paid their class 3 components plus a producer price differential. The order enforces payments of minimum prices to producers or their cooperative. We do not prevent payment above the minimum, and I'll add a couple of comments on this one. So yes, we, using the survey of prices through the National Dairy Product Sales Report, we and the federal formulas, we come up with what these class prices are, and then we have a price discovery of our statistical uniform price. That's a minimum statistical uniform price. There's nothing that prevents a producer from getting revenue or money for their milk above that. Another thing, as far as enforcing minimum prices, when we say to producers or their cooperative, and this is sometimes confusing, we are checking the price of between the handler and the producer. That payment that gets made, that's what you want to call it, auditing or checking to ensure minimum prices. That's one connection we're looking at. The other may be the handler or the buyer of milk and the cooperative receiving that payment. So on behalf of their members, we're also making sure that payment met minimum prices. And I make this comment, and we'll see, I think, maybe on even the next slide, because there's the payment that then the cooperative might make to its membership that we don't regulate. We don't regulate that. And I think I get into that in the next slide. And then we also do monitor deductions from producer milk checks. So authorized deductions, our audit staff are looking always over that type of information to make sure everything is accurate and appropriate. We also provide for accurate weighing and testing of producer milk. This includes running calibration samples. It's our tank calibration program where we are, making sure weights and how the milk is measured is accurate, and also quarterly testing of non-members. If you are a non-member producer, you're verified once a month, 3 to 4 samples a month, just to check to make sure these are all protections for the producer to make sure the weights are accurate. What we're saying is in the milk as far as its components are accurate. And if we find something amiss there, for whatever reason, we can step in and make sure that things are set back straight. And this is a little bit part of marketing services, but federal orders also provide market information or market research. This is a little bit of where I come in as the economist. We have a lot of published information. We do work at time. This is a great example of our outreach or market information that we're happy to share and contribute to help the industry make decisions. But that's another important part of what federal orders do and can provide. Okay, what orders do not do? This is important. Federal orders do not regulate producers or control production. So the federal orders actually is a regulation on handlers. We don't actually have anything to say about how much the producer produces, how much milk they produce, where they produce it, when they produce it. That's all up to the producer, and we don't have any type of regulation on that. We do not regulate payment practices by cooperatives to their members. So this is what I referred to a little bit on the last slide. We make sure that the cooperative got the money they received for the milk the cooperative sold to all their buyers met what we were saying was the minimum order value. The cooperative then can pay their membership based on what they may have as membership contracts and their payment practices. That is not under our, I guess if you want to call it jurisdiction or something that our auditors are looking at. We do not guarantee a market or a blend price level. What this means, and it doesn't mean that the federal order is, we don't act callous or blind to a producer or producer group that maybe lost the market or something. And we have at times, assisted with some information that might help them. But there's nothing we can do to guarantee that a producer has that market. We cannot force somebody's hand. We cannot say, you must take this producer's milk and so forth. And we do have minimum prices based on our survey of prices, but we do not establish and say, all right, we're going to guarantee a $20 price for everybody. We just don't do that. We also do not establish sanitary quality standards. That sometimes is confused. It's not something our office does. And then lastly, we do not prevent payments of prices higher than federal order minimum prices. We're not a support program. And again, certainly producers can receive whatever the market will bear, and certainly above the minimum if the market bears that. We don't stand in the way of that in any fashion. So what we'll look at next is, so the data that are about to be presented, right? The two primary sources of our federal order data come through our process of pooling and price discovery. So what we call is pool data. As we're just finishing up today, I don't believe it's done yet. We're going to discover the September statistic uniform price. Handlers are submitting their information to us so that we can, what we call, run the pool and find and discover that price for the month. After that happens, handlers are required to submit their producer payrolls to our office. That information is what we call producer payroll data. And this information is audited. It's verified by our producer payroll staff and our audit staff. Typically, it takes, I would say about 2 months for this process to happen before what we say is close the month. But even then, we often can have changes made based on some audits that might happen after the fact. But these are the two primary sources of information. So a lot of times when you're dealing with our data, For instance, we produce a monthly statistical report that's on our website. That is coming from our pool information. But there may be other information that's going to be like we might have something in our annual statistical bulletin. Might be full of some producer payroll data as well. So there's two different sources. They don't always match up because some of the information we have at pool time may not be exactly what's coming in on the producer payrolls when we receive those. Another data note, we often have to, there's confusion sometimes. We talk a lot about production, number of producers. It's important to remember that the statistics that we are presenting and that we obtain are related to pooled sources of milk and producers. So it does not necessarily, it's not the full universe of production or producers in a region or area. It might be, but it could be. So for instance, certainly maybe in the states of New York and Pennsylvania, there's regions there where all the milk produced in the state may not be pooled on our federal order, the Northeast federal order, and wouldn't be part of some of the numbers. So when we're talking about milk production, it might be fairly close. When we look at our pool volumes, it might be a fairly close proxy for production, but it may not be exact. So sometimes if you're seeing, well, that's not quite the number we think of total producers or production, it may simply be the difference between what we are collecting as pool information as opposed to production. Okay, so as I said, I'm gonna take you a bit further out, and we're gonna start with the United States as far as marketings from all the counties in the United States into any federal order. This map, which was nicely produced, it's a great map. It's produced for us from out of our Kansas City Market Administrator's office, and it's in the record here, and certainly when it's in your hands, you can see it a little better. Go ahead, is that Dan? All right.
Yeah.
So what you're seeing here first, the red counties represent, that's 25% of all the federal order milk markings are from those counties in red. That's 14 counties, as you see in the map, produced 25% of the milk that is pooled on a federal order. The darker blue that you see, that's the next 25%. So if you combine those, I'm going to call it royal blue, or that darker blue, and the red counties, that's a combined of 57 counties. Those 57 counties in the United States, they're marketing 50% of all the milk volumes marketed on a federal order across the country. You can look, in our region a little closer. Like I said, if you're, I'm not sure what your viewing angles are on this, but it gets a little small, and you can see, there's certainly where the large counties. There are some in the Northeast, that one red that's Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. That's our one, of the very large counties contributing to the top 25%. And then we have a few in New York and another in Pennsylvania at that level. So we're going to go into the next two. It's the same, it's a United States map. Of these counties, these are the counties that from 2015 to 2020 saw an increase in the marketings pooled on federal orders. Of this, the black counties that you see, they represent where we had an increase in milk marketings. This is for a month of December of 2015, 2020, an increase of something greater than 10 million pounds. The blue, that darker blue color, represents an increase of 5 to 10 million pounds for that month between 2015 and 2020 for the month of December. So you can see, if you hone in a little bit, even here in the Northeast and Vermont, you can see there are some of these large growth, counties with the black and the dark blue in New York State. And then we do see some growth in counties. Vermont has, it looks like about 5 counties that were that had growth, but they grew by something less than 1 million pounds from 2015 to 2020 for the month of December. But again, you can see the prior map, you can see where the milk for the federal orders are coming from to some extent. You can see where the growth in some of this maybe larger volume in growth is occurring. This map, this is the flip side. So these are the counties across the country that have experienced or seen decreased marketings, and pool volumes from the federal order. To give you a little bit of numbers, because the scale or the legend's a little small. Again, this is from December 15 to December 2020. The black counties have experienced the greatest amount of decrease. They've lost greater than 10 million pounds. There are 5 of those counties throughout the country, most in the West. That yellowish orange color, that's the group of counties. There are 20 of them that experience maybe the second largest volume decline, somewhere between 5 and 10 million pounds between this 5-year period. And then you've got the red, and you see some of these red counties, if you're able to see closely enough in Vermont, where between these 5 years, there has been a decrease of 1 to 5 million pounds of milk and production pooled on the federal order system. And then, of course, the pink are all the rest, other declines that are they've declined, but less than 1 million pounds. So it's just and again, this is for the record, just because a little context of in the federal order system, where these marketings come from, where they're growing, where they're declining. And what we'll do now is we're going to start focusing a little bit more regionally into the Northeast.
This smell pretty good.
The next series of maps, and Dan, I spoke to you about this. These are what I call heat maps, and they work a little best when I flow through them 1, 2, 3, and 4. What they depict is just a colored representation of the density of where the producers are located that pool milk on the Northeast order. The red is the warmer colors, and the red being that'd be 750 or so producers from the county down to 0 with the cooler numbers. And Dan, I wanted to tell you, I just about I have a series of maps on the producers. I have a series of heat map on production, but I just got it. I can follow that up, Dan, and send it afterwards. But I had one map there that I still wanted to look at, I had a question on. So I was about to include it. But for the record and for the task force, I will show you the sequence for producers, the density of producers, but I will have to follow up this meeting with adding the production side of it for you. So this map is representing July 2004, and it's a heat map showing, where the density of producers pooling on the order are. I'm going to take you through another 3 maps in sequence, just to give an idea of what's happened with producers every 5 years. So you'll see 2004, then 2009, then 14, and then 2019. And I'll do it a few times. It's almost like flipping those things you might have done as a kid when you drew and you had to see the actual movement. So I think I'll do this. I'll go back. I'll let you know I'm going back, and we'll do it in. So here's 2004, and we advance to 2009, and you see too much a difference, and then we go ahead again, and then to 2019. So basically, I'm going to go backwards again. So now we're back in 2004. And you can see where the regions of these producers, the map, unfortunately, getting, I guess you could call it a cooler color, representing the loss of producers and where some of those producers are being lost. Here in 2019, we still have, the red denser area in Lancaster County, though we still have a loss there, but we have still maintained a number of producers there. There's not a lot of the orange area that you saw in 2004. Certainly through, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but through this region, a little bit of orange up here in Vermont in 2004, and so forth. As we advance forward, we can see here, and particularly in Vermont, which is our focus today, we've gotten a lot cooler, a few areas here where of the yellow for producer numbers. Again, I will submit to you these same heat maps on production because they probably work well together. It's just that I did have some questions on one of the maps that I wanted to show you today. I wanted to make sure it was accurate before I submit it, but I will submit that to you, Dan. Okay, now this map is just depicting the nature of the producers pooled on the Northeast order. What we're looking at here is producers by their co-op membership or not. So this is either members, non-members. What we're seeing here currently in 2021, and this is just for the January to August period, but in average for January to August, our membership producers for the Northeast have been 87% of them are co-op members currently. 90% of the milk produced by producers are coming from producers that are a member of a co-op. And obviously the flip number is what we have as non-members. I do not have a Vermont-centric value on this. I believe, it's certainly, up and near these figures, I would imagine. But just because to show, earlier on, the first up to about 9 years of the federal order, it was kind of 75% of producers in milk is about, co-op, co-op milk and producers. From about 2008 on, that started increasing over time. There was the increase you saw from 2016 to 2018 was related to a period when, DFA, Dairy Marketing Services, they were marketing a large number of non-member milk that they were not full members of a DFA or a co-op. And then at that point, there was a time when there was a decision they couldn't do that anymore. A lot of those members became, a lot of those producers became members of a co-op, and what you're seeing there. So I've highlighted that because it'll often get a question on, well, what's going on there? That's what happened. And then we've kind of been at a fairly level percentage again after that. So this next map and information is where the farm milk is delivered to, and it's depicting a time period from October 2020, from October 2005 to October 2020. So the way that we price milk, we use what are called class 1 differentials. And these differentials are what are being referred to on the left side of the table as location differentials. Producers are paid a differential based on the plant location of where their milk, went. And so we've grouped the differentials in the order in $3 and above, $2.60 to $3, $2.40 to $2.60, and then below $2.40. And we've shaded them likewise. So our higher zones, $3 and above, is this right along the ocean there and on the metro areas from Boston down to the DC, Maryland area. And then, the differentials tend to get a little bit lower as you head out from there. What we've seen in this, in the data here are, there's been a decline in the amount of milk, a proportion of milk that is being pooled in the differentials in the $3 and above zone. So back in 2005, about 15 or so years ago, it was above 40% being pooled at plants in differential zones in that darker blue zone, okay? Today, that number is just about 27%. Then you can look in, so where did the volume, we might have seen the growth there in the outer zones in the 240 to 260 zone has gone from 12.5 to about 18%. And then the 240 and below zone, the furthest out zone in the white area, have gone from about, just under 16% in 2005, and now about a quarter of the milk is finding a home at a differential zone in those locations. So like I said, producers do receive payment based on the PPD of the location. So this can have an impact certainly on what may be a uniform price when we're calculating a uniform price, but this is certainly a dynamic that's going on and has gone on obviously over the last 15, 20 years. This can happen because we've got plants that have either gone out of business in the certain zones and maybe moved a plant, just different production trends over time. Those are things all play a part of this dynamic. I'm going to drill down a little bit and we're going to look at, it's still going to be a map of our location zones on location differentials, same groupings, $3 and above, $2.60 to $3, $2.40 to $2.60, and less than $2.40. This particular slide breaks this out by class. We're going from 2004 to 2020, but it tells a similar story. For your reference, Vermont's differential zones range from 240 in the northern part of Vermont and to $2.80 in the southern, more southern half of the state. Here, what dynamics can we pull out? We see if we look at class one, certainly in the $3 and above zone, the upper left part of this table, in 2004, about 62% of the milk, class one, was being pooled in this higher zone. And, to 2020, that's just above 48%. So that's one dynamic. If you look at class two, we can see the $3 and above zone also went from 37% of the class two volume that was pooled in that $3 and above zone. That percentage is now 17%. And what the growth is we've seen as far as the proportion as we've seen is in the 240 and 260 zone, going from about 14.5% right here to 36.5% in 2020. So where the class two volume has shifted as well by proportion. We look over here in class three, not much change in our $3 and above zone for class three, or in our 260 to $3 zone. But we do see some change here where we've lost a little bit of proportion in the 240 to 260 zone from 2004 here to 2020, going from about 23% of the class three volume pool there to 15%. But more of the class three milk is now, in proportion wise, is being pooled here in the lower, less than 240 zone. So out in these white regions here, this is where we see that. Class four, maybe the biggest changes here might be the same thing between these 240, 260 zone, going from 15 to maybe 12% in this zone. And the lowest zone is being represented from a little bit more, from maybe 14.5% to almost 22% here. So a little more milk as a proportion being class four being pooled in those further out regions. And again, where the milk is pooled, and this does have some impact on the industry and pricing. This is just a brief look at, just the number of pool plants, largely our pool distributing and supply plants. We can see these have declined from 2000. We had 81 pool plants on the order. We lost 10 over 10 years to 70. And then from 2010 to 2014, we were down to 60. And then we've been roughly at about that number for the past 7 years. I think we're still about those numbers now. I went to 2019 here, but 2021, we're about holding at these numbers.
Hey, Brian, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if you could, I think, explain the different categories.
Sure.
Between fluid plants.
Yes, the pool distributing plants, those are going to be, the plants that we, they're required to, they're regulated by us as class one plants that have sales of, class one in the order. The supply plants are plants, they have to meet, they have to meet a requirement during the year of how much milk they send to the class one market. That's been typically 10% of that milk has to go in order for those plants to qualify in the order. And the fall month can change. The federal order says 20%. In a number of recent years, we've adjusted that, and it's been adjusted down more recently to 10%. So we've been effectively at a 10% requirement for a number of years now. Though we still have the order language still says 20%. The fall is September, October, November, and that's historically been a period where we get milk production tends to be waning, but we get a return to some class one demand with schools returning and so forth. Going back further, that was a time when we might have a call to increase that percentage to bring more milk to the class one market. We have not had a call as such for a number of years. But instead, we have had some requests to lower that percentage and the reason it's lowered is because we also do not want to encourage what might be called uneconomic movements of milk. So we are cognizant of that. In other words, just moving milk to move it to meet these requirements, there's some costs involved. So we are sensitive to that when the industry asks, and we try to be responsive if the economics of it makes sense. Obviously, we are a fluid program, and we are ensuring a class 1 product, a fluid product to the marketplace. System plants, so a pool supply plant, we have just one. They have to meet that 10% by themselves. They have to meet that requirement. A pool supply or system plant it could be a co-op that has a number of plants, but as a whole system of plants, be it like if it's Agra and you've got multiple plants, but as long as they don't have to meet it by plant, they can meet it as an entire system. So if one of those plants isn't sending 10% of milk to the class 1 market, if it's being made up somewhere else as a system, they can meet that 10%. And the pool supply unit is similar to that. This might be something where I think we have one there. It might be like if Hood, let's say, has a number of plants, it can be a manufacturing plant attached with them that they can apply the class 1 utilization from other plants to make their requirement. So this is how we regulate plants and who's regulated by us on the market. So that is a little bit of difference. There's some, like I said, supply plants are all having to meet. They're there because, and they're supply plants because if needed, they need to be able to supply milk, fluid milk to the federal order marketplace. Thank you, Dan. Okay, we discussed a little bit of, right, we price milk based on its use in our 4 classes. This is going back to 2000 up through 2021, and it's a visual representation of our 4 classes as a percent of the order volume. And I highlighted the where we had a peak and where we had the lowest, which happens to be the most recent year. This is for, in order to include 2021, I just went through our most recent pooling pool months, January through August that we have. We're doing September now, so I didn't have that. But you can see we had fairly consistent 40 to 45% utilization in class 1, up and through maybe 2008, 2007. And then we started to see this declining period for the federal order, for the Northeast anyway. And we've reached a low here for this period, averaging 29.4% class 1 utilization in 2021. Now, the flip side of that, I would say I'd probably characterize this, where is the utilization going? If I look at 2015 to 2021, the yellow bar is depicting the class 4 utilization. And I'd say that has come up. That's where much of the volume might be finding its home. That wasn't going to class 1. And if you look at 2021, you can almost see that this period of time is very closely getting to a 25% across all 4 classes type of order for us. Again, there used to be higher class 3 over here in the beginning part of the order, but it's been pretty steady since 2010. Class 3 at about 25%. Class 2, there's been some growth. I'd say that growth was probably related to some of the yogurt, increases we've seen over the years. But again, that's somewhat stabilized, and we've been right around 25% with that as well. So the dynamic here more recently has been between a class 1 decline and an increase in our class 4 utilization percents. This is I included this chart. It's something I did as part of another analysis we were doing, but I think it pertains to this group, so I included it. Each of these bars on this chart, this is going from 2000 to 2020, is just representing the class 1 receipts from the September through November period relative to where we were in 2000 when we started the federal order, the Northeast federal order. So we can see this is just another way of looking at maybe this decline in class 1. We were at 40% and then coming down to 29. We're fairly consistent up to 2007, but we are now reaching about 24, almost 25% below our class 1 volumes from when we first started the Northeast federal order. Yet again, this is another way of looking at that. This is part of the same analysis I did with the last slide, but again, I included it here for the record. This is just highlighting where this, class 1 utilization has gone, where we see two distinct periods where we had a bit steeper decline in class 1, here from 2011 to 2015. We kind of were leveling out here a bit. And then when we returned to 2019 and 20, again, we had some more precipitous decline, I guess, in the period. 2021, it's been a little bit slower of a decline again, but with the pandemic markets and everything, it's really hard to tell, are we softening this, this decline? Is this going to continue or not? I wouldn't hazard a guess at this point, but just to point out that so far, that's what we're seeing for 2021. It hasn't been on the same rate of decline, but when we hear about declines in class 1 in our market, certainly these two periods of time, we saw some fairly rapid declines in our class 1 utilization. And why might that be? This is information that is put together. This is total per capita sales of fluid milk products in the Northeast marketing area from January through June period. And we go from 2010 through some selected years up to 2021. And so we're looking at this. So we're combining the USDA's estimated fluid milk product sales report with some census data to calculate this. But we can see here, it's basically people are just consuming less fluid milk products on a per capita basis. This is a trend, certainly, near and dear to the marketplace in the class 1 market. A lot of the challenges come from this type of trend, and it's what we are struggling and what we face today as we meet and look at what we do in the fluid industry. But you can see some certainly decline here. Just the consumer preferences and so forth are what's going on here. Maybe the makeup of the demographics as well has an impact. If different demographic groups, demand fluid milk differently, but certainly playing out this way. And this is one more Northeastern centric slide. This is what I'm referring to as structural change in the Northeast. And this is what I think this certainly has a major impact on what's going on. These two charts, one above the other, and I put them above each other for a reason. So, because the top slide is looking at the percent of the milk pooled on the order by the size of operation. So how much they produce per month. And so I highlighted the largest category of production on the farm or producer and the smallest. So we have on the small end under 100,000 pounds of milk a month. And on the larger size, the green is the operations, the producers that are pooling more than 1.5 million pounds of milk a month. And so if we look at this by farm, we see that 62% of the milk pooled on the Northeast is coming from farms that are in this under 100,000 pounds of milk a month size. And in 2009, we had 1% of our producers would be characterized as pooling over 1.5 million pounds of milk a month. By 2019, 57% of the producers are still in this category of under 100,000 pounds of milk a month, whereas 3.2% are in the category of over 1.5 million pounds of milk marketed or pooled on the order. So 3.2%, it's still a small percent. It does represent like a threefold, growth in that category. But it looks, okay, that's fairly similar. If I look at this by pounds, okay, the lower chart is going to show this by pounds pooled. So I still break it out by the pounds, the marketing is a month by the type of producer. But now we're looking at, well, how much of this milk that we pool is coming from these. So we have 2009 is showing 22.9, so 23% of the milk pooled on the federal order, Northeast, is coming from this smallest category of farms. In 2009, 18% of the milk was coming from the largest production style that we have here, over 1.5 million. By 2019, 12% of the milk was coming from the smallest farms, but now we're almost at 44% of the milk volume pooled on the Northeast Order is coming from farms that are producing 1.5 million pounds or more of milk a month. If I were to combine this blue category, the second biggest, which is 1 million to 1.5 million. So if I were to say, okay, what about 1 million pounds or more production per month? Now you're getting up and around, half of the volume of milk in the Northeast Order is coming from that 1 million pound a month or more farm, and about maybe 5% of the farms. That's what the Northeast looks. Now, I'm going to then take us to the same slide, basically, but we're going to look at it for Vermont. And from there, then we'll go into some more Vermont state-centric type information. This is, again, structural change. This is how it's playing out in Vermont. I've added a year here. We're going to go back from 2010, 15, and 20. So from here, the same size categories are involved, but in 2010, 54% of the farms that pooled milk on the order were producing less than 100,000 pounds of milk, or at least pooling it on the order. And we had 2.4% of the farms pooling on the order were the very large, what we call very large, but greater than 1.5 million pounds. By 2020, 47, almost 48% of the farms were still in the category of under 100,000. But for Vermont, 7% of the farms in 2020 were farms that were pooling more than 1.5 million pounds of production on the Northeast Order a month. The chart below is showing this by pounds. So the smallest category here, and 12 is representing 12.5% of the producers were in this small category pooling on the Northeast Order. 25% of the milk in 2010 was coming from the largest size category in Vermont. By 2020, that small category represented just 6.4% of the milk pooled on the Northeast Order from Vermont. But the largest size category was now representing half of the milk pooled from the state of Vermont was coming from these large, the largest category, 1.5 million pounds or more. And so that's definitely a story. I mean, if you combine, again, if I combine this second size here, where my cursor is, if you can see that, that's another almost 20% of the milk volume. So almost 70% of the Vermont, milk pooled from Vermont is coming from producers that are pooling more than 1 million pounds a month. So that, and that can certainly be, that can pose some challenges. There's obviously, those are different types of operations there that you're all, seeing. And, we've got pricing that needs to work for everybody in the marketplace. This is a real challenge, I believe, that we're facing. We're going to go into some state-centric. This is just a table. We're going to look at some producers. We're going to look at production, and then some daily deliveries by producer information over the next several slides. Here we're highlighting Vermont, New York, Pennsylvania, Northeast as far as the number of producers pooled on the order. You'll see these numbers in the next few slides, but Vermont in 2000, we had 1,549 producers pooled from Vermont. By 2020, we have 537 on average producers pooled on the order from Vermont. This is not a Vermont only decline. We see declines in both New York, Pennsylvania, and the Northeast again as a whole, obviously, but New York started with over 6,700 and down to about 3,200. Pennsylvania started in 2000 with 6,700, and they're now down to just under 4,000 producers. The Northeast as a whole, you can see we had 17,000 producers in 2000, and currently in 2020, we are now just below, we've dropped below 9,000 producers pooling milk on our order. This is how it looks graphically. These are number of producers pooled in Northeast Order. These are basically those declines you just saw on the other page. I did include Maine on this slide. It's hard to see there. They did have a decline as well that mirrors to some extent the other states, but we'll look at that. The next slide, I just pulled the Northeast out for scale. so the states show up a little bit better here. The bottom table here underneath this chart, I've just presented you the percent decline from 2020, from 2000 to 2020. So Vermont, that decline represented a decline of 65.3%. The Northeast order as a whole has declined in producer counts by 48.9%. And you can see the other states, Pennsylvania held a little bit better, but still certainly a 41% drop in their producer count and about a 53% drop in New York. The next slide, I think we're just literally looking, this is just Vermont, same data, but it just shows again, where I pulled out 2000, there's that 1549 number, and 2020, where we're at with 537. So, here we're going to look at receipts from milk from these producers by state. So we're looking at the Northeast and then the same states, Vermont, New York, Pennsylvania, and Maine. A quick look at this. Overall, the Northeast has seen some increases from 2004 to maybe 2017, where then it levels off a bit. If I look at each states, I can see that largely that increase in Northeast is probably coming from New York State, which is this orange line. This is New York. There's been a little bit of growth here, maybe in Pennsylvania, but overall, it looks a little bit steadier. And the milk from Vermont is pretty steady. It's fairly consistent level. We don't see too much there. In Maine as well, I've seen about that same. I'm going to pull Vermont out for you in a minute. This gets rid of New York just for scale again. So we can see again, still looking pretty flat here. This is the largest growth on the federal order in milk receipts is coming out of New York as far as pooled on the federal order. And this here is just Vermont, receipts from milk from producers from 2000 to 2020. This dotted line is just a trend line I threw on there, just highlighting how consistent, you have a little dip here in the middle, but overall, that 2.6, billion pounds number annually has been about where we're at for pooled milk from Vermont. So with increasing total on Northeast, fairly consistent poolings from Vermont. We see Vermont's portion of the Northeast pool declining from 11.1% 2000 to about 9.5% 2020. Again, that's just math, basically. You've got the same volume divided by a larger volume that's not coming from Vermont. So Vermont's a little bit less represented by receipts on the order here. How can Vermont lose 1,000 producers and still maintain almost a consistent volume of milk pooled on the order? This is what we're looking at here. This is daily average output of milk per producer. This again highlights a little bit, is more probably evidence back of some of the larger growth in larger farms that we saw on some of the earlier slides. Vermont started out in 2000 with a higher, what we call DDP, and now there's a program that gets called that too, so I hate to confuse that. But anyway, this is just Vermont started out, above the Northeast on average in the other states back in 2000. They have maintained that, rank as far as leading this group depicted on the map with their daily average output per milk producer. And they're, so you can see New York grew by a little bit more in this category as far as their percent growth in this statistic, but fairly evenly with Vermont. Pennsylvania grew, you can see they grew this daily average output by 82%. That's still strong growth. It just didn't match some of the other states, and is likely why the Northeast average is at 119%. There's a lot of milk there in Pennsylvania still, so that weight on that number pulls that down a bit. But this is why we're still getting consistent volume pooled from Vermont in face of the decline in producers that we have talked about. I'm going to talk a little bit about prices. I've got a couple slides here. These are mailbox prices and our statistical uniform price at Boston. The green line represents Vermont, and the gray bars on here are just highlighting the difference between New England's mailbox price and the statistical uniform price. We didn't have a Vermont mailbox price published, so we're just using New England as the best proxy for now. But the right-hand column over here, this axis is related to the bars. The left axis is the per hundredweight pricing for the mailbox price. I just pulled this out. This gray bar represents this difference between the green line and in this case, I guess we're looking at the SUP, which is the black line. So Vermont, not so much maybe in the 2004 through 2006 period, but over time they've been a little bit, Vermont's been a little bit above in their average mailbox price relative to the others depicted on this map, New York and the statistical uniform price. Mailbox prices by region can differ for a number of reasons. It could certainly be where the milk ends up. We talked about those differential zones earlier. And if one region's milk finds its more of its volume in a higher differential zone than another, that could show up in these differences in mailbox price for region. It could be as well premiums paid that show up in the mailbox price, things like state programs and so forth can be included in the mailbox price. They show up there. And you may even find the type of milk, we see. So if you've got a region that may have a larger percentage of organic milk, and if that price difference is large, having a larger weight on the number of producers in one region versus another can also show up as a difference in your mailbox price. So that's what we're seeing here. So, but for some various amount or, whatever those reasons are, we do see New England riding a little bit above the other regions depicted here. I'm going to look at the next slide. The lines are the same on this slide, so not to be confused. You aren't imagining it's the same exact lines. The bar chart is now just depicting the difference between New England's mailbox price and the Northeast mailbox price as a whole. But roughly, it's about the same. You can see a little bit smaller difference here in the earlier, mid 2004 to 2006, and then you're maybe $1 here in 2015 higher than the Northeast, having come down a little bit here to about just under probably 75 cents more than the rest of the Northeast on average for your mailbox price in New England. Again, the mailbox price is a statistic that captures every producer that's pulled on the order, whether you're conventional milk, organic milk, or whatever. As a benchmark to compare, you do have to take that into account and be mindful of, okay, there's other milk in there. What am I, as a producer, is using that as what am I getting compared to the average? I don't know, there could be differences in your premium structure where your milk's going and everything. So when you're evaluating yourself or your region versus the others, take that into account. All right, we are coming down to this. The next couple slides are going to highlight where milk that's produced in Vermont goes and where milk that's used in Vermont comes from. So this slide is the destination of milk produced in Vermont. So this is where the milk that's produced in Vermont is going. And I've got on here, I'm depicting, I'm showing you 2011, 2015, and 2019. And you're looking at that both by a percent and then just the volumes, for those that are, want to talk in volumes. What you can see on this top line here, milk that's produced in Vermont going to Vermont. So it's staying in state. In 2011, 46% of the milk that was produced in Vermont went to a destination in Vermont and used there. That grew to 55% in 2015. And that percent reached 62% in 2019. So you're looking at almost 2/3 of the milk that's produced in Vermont is going to Vermont. And then obviously the inverse of that percentage is going outside of Vermont. I am able to show Massachusetts happened to be the largest state that received milk outside of Vermont. This percentage here is a percentage of the total, not a percentage of the outside milk. So what you're looking at is 35 in 2011, almost 36% of the milk that Vermont produced went to Massachusetts. By 2019, just 24% of milk produced in Vermont went to Massachusetts. You can see how the pounds relate down here to get us at those percentages. Again, for your reference, so we do see Vermont, the marketings from 1.2 up to 1.6 billion in 2019, staying in Vermont, and a somewhat declining number going outside. It's a little bit more stable. And we see Massachusetts, about 919 million went to Massachusetts 2011, 642 million. So it is a decline in milk that left the state and going to Massachusetts. So a little bit of a change in dynamic for where the milk produced in Vermont is going. We're going to look at, okay, the plants that are inside of Vermont, where are they getting that milk from? So here, I'm looking at the years 2011, 2015, 19, and 20. So Vermont, this is pooled milk received by plants in Vermont from a Vermont source. In 2011, that was about 72.7% was coming from Vermont source and stayed in Vermont to a Vermont plant. By 2020, that number grew, by 10 percentage points about to 81.2%. So to state that, that means that Vermont is milk being received in Vermont, 81% of that's coming from your own state, Vermont. And here are the pounds associated with those percentages. So you can see in 2020, they got almost 1.6 billion pounds received in Vermont from a Vermont source, and about 365 million is coming from outside of Vermont. And that is your total received at a plant in Vermont that we show in our, this is also, these are from our producer payroll statistics that we show. So, and what you're seeing here is largely more of the milk produced in Vermont seems to be staying in the state of Vermont, and combined with, we've got fewer producers, certainly a lot fewer producers over time, but a steady level of milk produced in Vermont and pooled on the order. My last few slides are just going to show, we always show in our, we do publish all the plants that were part of the, the pool plants on the order, non-pool plants on the order, those are on our website. These next three slides, just so that they're in the record, these are handlers receiving Vermont milk, and I've got them for 2011 and 2015 and 19, I believe, or 20. So just so that you can see where the milk's going. Just for your reference, I've sorted them, if you want to see by state. I sorted them by state, but I threw Vermont up front. It's not fair that you start with a V and always have to be in the back end. So I put you up there in the front, make it easier for you. And then from there, it's just alphabetical by state, and in sub-state, it's alphabetical by the plant that's receiving the milk. If I look at them quickly, I mean, it's just very small. You may not be able to see who these plants are, but again, as you reference this in your discussions, you would at least have this information. If I look at 2015, you've gone from, I forget here, maybe almost 80 plants. You're now about 50, just over 50 plants receiving. And then 2019, it's roughly the same number. The columns are a little different, but if I recall, it's about one or two number off from each other as far as the number of plants receiving milk between 2015 and 19. So that's held steady. It might be a few different plants in there receiving, but the number that are receiving has been steady from 2015 to 2019. And so that that's the end of my slides that I have for information, to present to you today. And hopefully, I think the takeaways, as I said, we saw a lot about, we did talk about what federal orders do and don't do, but statistically speaking, we did see declines in producer counts. We saw what was happening with milk pool from the Vermont region. We saw some of the impact, or how the structural change in industry is playing out with federal order data as far as where the milk's coming from related to production size. And we saw a little about where Vermont milk is going and where they're getting their milk from. So that concludes my prepared information for you. And certainly, Dan, if you have any questions or, anything you want to highlight or so with me, I'm certainly here for a little bit for you.
Well, thank you very much. So, we'll open it up for questions. Dan, do you have,
I yield to anybody else.
yeah,
Mike, are you there to put or Brian, you can do that. There we go. I yield to everybody else, Brian.
yeah. Any questions, John Roberts?
That was quite fascinating, Brian. I wondered, do you think it makes a difference whether the milk is pooled in Vermont or in the state, or pooled out of the state? Do you think, does that have a negative or a positive impact on the price the farmer gets?
Well, the answer I give you there, and certainly I appreciate that I fascinated you, because I think Dan wanted me to do that when I talked to Dan. So thank you. I was hoping it didn't go too long and do anything else. But I would say, as far as the impact on a producer's price, where the milk is produced by differential zone can have an impact on, that price. So if you're like the reason I included some of the information on the differential zone of where the milk is going. If your milk is going, if you're going into a $3 higher zone, that producer is going to be receiving the price at that destination relative to the destination, maybe closer to home, let's say in Vermont, if it's going, close. But at the same time, I'd also state that, producers are also paying for, hauling, and they have to get that milk to that market. So there's that give and take, and that's where the net price, you definitely want to look at what the net price is on that. Our differentials have not changed since 2000. Those were developed at order reform, and they've been in place since. I think there's been a couple changes in differentials in the Florida and Southeast at one point, but in our region and most regions through the federal system, there have not been changes to that. But that's, under our system where producers are also paying for, for hauling, you'd have to take that into account,
Yeah. Yeah. And my sort of other question, I was a dairy farmer for nearly 40 years. But it's always this, farmers always get paid a month behind, there's that lag.
Mm-hmm.
I wondered if what you're thinking, whether you had any thoughts in today's situation where we have computers, we can move information so fast. Do you think there's any advantage, any possibility of reducing that time lag to the farmer so that what they actually, get is more accurately relayed to the farmer more quickly, or is it just our system is such that that's really not going to be possible?
It is a good question, and I know there have been times even when we mulled over, because we do advanced price class 1 and so forth, and then when people are receiving that, there's been discussion. I don't have anything prepared probably to give you what I would maybe say is an educated response to that. I think I'd be, I'd have to mull that over a little bit more, I think, for you, John, if to give you what I think would be a good answer. But I know I've heard that as a discussion before. I wouldn't know how soon, how earlier we could do that. If that was even the case, if you can, up the dates, if you can price everything advanced or so forth. I've heard these type of things come up as possibilities. Frankly, I haven't done any of the analysis on that to come up with that type of an answer for you at this time.
Don't worry. Well, thank you very much, Brian. Yep.
No, you are very welcome.
Other questions for Brian? Brian, I have, John, go ahead.
Thank you, Bobby. Brian, I just a couple quick questions, then a longer one was, when you talked about fluid milk products, what's included in there? Like chocolate milk or the half and half and light creams?
Yeah, yes, you'd have, certainly flavored milks are as part of that. You probably, organic fluid products are also part of that. And I believe that's, your whole milks, your whole milks, 1%, 2%, and so forth. Gosh, is it
All the creams, like
yes.
whipping cream, heavy cream?
That I don't believe, is that a fluid milk product? I don't know. I have to, off the top of my head, I'm drawing a blank for you right now, John. But the categories, 1 second, if I can look that up for you while we talk. I'll tell you exactly what that is. My apologies.
No problem. And ice creams in what category?
2
Okay.
plus 2.
Yeah. And whey is in what category? Like
4. Dry whey
okay.
would be 4. Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple. Well, one question would be, what comes to mind when thinking about these classes, which I never knew until these hearings, was are there certain food products in the grocery store where huge amounts of milk goes to that we don't really think of dairy? We were just thinking of pet food I saw up there, or soups or milk chocolate. A lot of candy, right, takes a lot of dairy. And so, or if McDonald's, right, does a pudding or something like that, that what are some really big destinations, that are sort of what we think of as dairy, where a lot of our dairy product milk goes to?
Yeah. One example that is always, and I don't know the volumes on this, but as an example of what you're saying, I mean, a lot of, consumers, a lot of times are looking for higher protein products and so forth. And it's my understanding that, some of your protein bars were just spraying, dried milk powders on that to increase those, those protein numbers for those products, and certainly, there may be, I don't have any volumes on that, but, and you're certainly right. There's just a number of dairy products. You certainly mentioned cream, like for coffee. I mean, the coffee industry, like your Starbucks and so forth, a lot of milk. Those are, the coffee people might call them coffee companies, but, we might call them dairy companies, and sure, that's not maybe at the grocery store, but to your point, there are markets for dairy products that you don't think of. Off the top of my hand, I can't come up with any with volumes for you or anything.
Yeah, and then one other question was, which I liked about your data, that essentially is non-neutral, and that you're not trying to sell anything like maybe a lot of the people in the dairy industry we'd have in these hearings. So I wondered, have you ever overlaid some of what we just saw, your dairy statistics, with, say, the increases in non-dairy beverages, the almond milks and soy milks, over the last 20 years, or also, I don't know when the last time we could drink whole milk in schools was, but at institutions, but also that data. It would be very interesting to see if the lines are going in different directions.
I agree. I haven't done that. It would be an interesting study in that, the other part is, some of the story, obviously, milk has, it's been a very, the beverage category as a whole, there's been increasing number of competitors, substitutes, or whatever you might even call them. Not that there's ever a substitute for milk. Some people think that way, I guess. But it would be interesting to see, because how much of the fluid milk industry is losing to competition from, let's say, water? How much is coming from these other quote unquote milk substitutes or so forth? So are we still losing, market share to things that aren't milk substitutes, and people, maybe in other words, is the loss now coming from maybe the milk overall steady versus, but within the category, milk's losing to the folks that think, nut milks and these other drinks are suitable substitutes. Be interesting to find out. I could look something like that up. I don't know how much we could do with federal order data, but I think there's a story to tell there with the fluid market for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions for Brian?
You want to go?
Brian, I'm wondering, as your records show, your chart show, we're utilizing 2/3 of our milk right here in Vermont, whereas we used to ship that to Boston or out of state. Did we make a mistake by pushing value-added products, thinking that we would gain more money for our farms by building and making value-added products, and yet we're at a low point in pricing, and we tried to do the right thing? So did we make a mistake, or is it just the times that we're in that's causing these low milk prices?
I think I appreciate that question. And without being able to tell you whether you made a mistake or not, what I can maybe talk to is you talk about value-added products relative to, certainly there's a challenge. We saw the per capita sales in fluid milk, and if that trend were to continue, there's just less and less, we are a fluid milk program, but there's less and less of our utilization meeting that. So, we could be meeting that market, but the demand is there going down. And I would encourage, I think that answer has to be, well, you talk about value added, is how much more value is added? Can it compensate? I don't know, if you are, let's say you're selling a product that is not fluid, or you're getting some branding on top of it, how much more of that is compensating for, where the pricing of milk is coming. I think there's maybe more to it necessary to answer that question, whether that's a mistake or not. I don't know that. I don't have the numbers really to give a specific answer on that. But I certainly understand your thoughts and your question.
Well, speaking along that same line, I'm sure that our drop in sending milk to Boston was picked up by New York State, bringing their milk to Boston. And I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I assume that New York increased in sending product to Massachusetts, while we were declining sending milk to Massachusetts. Is there anything in your charts that show that?
I do not. I didn't. It wasn't in the scope of what I did prepare for you. And again, I mentioned this earlier, and I would also I'd encourage some thought. I know earlier today you were focused on transportation costs and so forth, and that's a reality too. Over the years, I've heard some commentary from folks. Even the Class 1 market. Gosh, it's expensive to get milk to our plant, and from further and further, and maybe some have thought it's better. Well, instead of that high cost of getting it into a New York market or maybe Boston or something, they don't take on the cost of transporting it, can produce into value-added products or something. So I think that transportation is a big challenge as well, and certainly even more so now. But I've heard that those costs have also had some impact on when you're trying to calculate, what market to serve, and you're looking at the real logistics of moving milk to those markets, and real costs involved, up against that revenue that you're getting. So I don't have all that information to give an answer specifically on that, but just to say though, it could be something to pursue as far as when you're making decisions.
Yeah. And I'm wondering too, are there any federal rules or regs in regards to how much or how many solids you can have in class one milk or add to like skim? Is there any
Yeah.
regs on that?
There are specific, I don't know the levels off the top of my head right now, but there are specific formulations that, would, if you were to, let's say, develop a product, depending on the makeup of that product could put you in class one or, a class two product or something. And we have had those discussions in the past as well. That has been an issue. So, but the answer to that is yes.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Brian. Terrific. Couple quick follow-up questions. First, we had a handout of what you submitted from the other day, and that's, I believe, is what Mike posted for your materials, and it's different from what you presented today. So
yeah,
we need you to resubmit your presentation today.
Yes, there are some.
Mike,
Will do. There are some pounds in there. And Dan, I mentioned what I can do. We spoke about, and again, they're just visuals, but I thought they were interesting to look at. I had the heat map visuals on there for producers. And when I resubmit, I will look to add those to it for your reference and for the record. For the heat maps that have the production included.
And Mike, I think we probably want to, I don't know how you do it, but we want to replace what was previously submitted with this so that it's accurate to his presentation.
Will do, Dan.
So I'm just wondering, Brian, it strikes me, and I can always ask you for more, and I'm trying to hold back here, but how difficult would it be to just you did Vermont, Pennsylvania, and New York numbers of producers 2000 to 2019. Could we do a table showing the 6 New England states, just to isolate out Vermont compared to the other states? And I had a conversation with John O'Brien the other day about the Vermont fluid market, and his questions really raised the point that this is a little off of what you did today. This is a little out, that the Vermont market itself has changed now with where the outlet for beverage milk is. Walmart, Costco, the superstores are selling more milk products. So you folks track packaged milk sales coming in from outside the order. I'm wondering, if Walmart's obviously moved into vertical integration. Is it possible to track the package sales in aggregate? I suppose if they're the only one, the answer is no. But to see what from the Vermont packaged milk market looks like now compared to 20 years ago.
Yeah, I can tell you, Dan, what I can do, like I would always do for you, is I can look and see what our data might show and what we can show with it. And certainly it would have communication with you. So I will, I'll look into that and get back to you very quickly. Mm-hmm.
Then just two more questions. I don't know the slide number, but the one you showed, comparing the mailbox price to the statistical uniform price, and you mentioned kind of in passing that the difference might be related to the organic sale price being so much higher. So if it's 50 cents to $1, give or take, it's been in the last 5 years. Is there a way? You guys don't track organic prices, right? So
correct.
That would have to be done independently to try to sift out to what extent that amount relates to the organic milk price. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so I've had to do it separately. Okay. I guess last request, the slides that show the percentage change of farm by size for Vermont, if you could do that for the farms themselves, just by farm numbers in addition. So you see what I mean?
So yeah, so I can submit something that has the counts on it.
Yeah,
Sure.
that'd be very helpful. Okay.
That it, Dean? Any other follow-up questions? No, everybody's happy. Well, Brian, we certainly appreciate all the work you put into supplying us with this information. I guess we're all trying to get to a better place for our farmers and our industry, and really appreciate the work that you folks do at the federal order. And thanks a lot for being with us.
Well, I appreciate those comments. And like I said, we're always happy, to help folks in the industry. We're certainly challenged a lot of different ways. And, I believe I can say for myself and anybody in the order is, if we have an opportunity to assist and help producers and the industry as a whole, continue to efficiently market milk and milk products, that's our mission. So I'm happy to have this opportunity today, and certainly I'm happy relationship, with your group now. And again, and we'll be in touch with Dan and going forward, and if there's anything else that we can provide for you. So thank you all for your time.
Yeah,
Thank you very much,
thanks
Brian.
again.
All right,
So,
take care, everyone.
Yeah,
Should we take a short break, Bobby? If
Yeah, we
Julie
can.
and Tim don't mind?
Tim, have you got 5 minutes or so to spare, and we'll take a short break and get with you at noon or shortly thereafter.
We just did the deep dive with the federal order, Tim and Julie, and back in the old days, Governor Cunin asked the general manager of St. Albans Co-op to come in and do a similar briefing for her, and she was scheduled for 2 hours, and after an hour and a half, she put her hands up next to her head and she said, "You have to stop now. My head is starting to ache." And I think if we're gonna hear from Julie and Tim, we need to let our brains recover a little bit. So